On this video, we're going to do a roof skin install on our 71 Barracuda. This is going to be the same for all 70, 74 E-body cars. So that's Barracudas, Challengers, and of course the Cudas. We're also going to have to do some inner structure work on here, and we're going to have to replace the drip rails. This car has a lot of rust on it. Already have the whole back end off. So first thing we'll do, we'll cut the roof skin off and walk you through the process on how we do it. Stay tuned. This is not a really hard job compared to most other parts of the car, but most are intimidated by it. So hopefully this video will help you kind of get the courage up and maybe attempt a roof skin on your E-body car. So here we are. We're basically just cutting around the edge of the roof skin. You could see I cut off a section in the corner because I was doing some inner structure repair on a previous video. But even if that was on there, I still would do it just around the edges for the most part. If the panel's too big, splice the roof down the middle and take it off in two sections. This to me was easy enough. I could handle the roof to just run around the edges right here, and we'll go back through where the factory pinch welded it, and then you'll see in a second how we chiseled that out. But right now we just want to get the main structure off the car. I think this is the easiest way to do it. Also, in the A-pillars around the corners, watch out, there's some lead in there. If you do take that out and see lead, use precautionary measures. Once we remove the roof skin, if you're not replacing the drip rails, I'm doing this as just an example, you would go ahead and take the rest of the roof skin off the drip rails. How I'm doing that is with a light touch on a grinding wheel, heating up the welds and just using a screwdriver, chisel, and a hammer and just kind of chiseling up on the factory pinch welds. And you see, once you can't move anymore, take the grinder and go back over it, and this process will just work right up. Again, we're going to do the factory drip rail, so this is more of an example of how you would do it instead of me actually doing it. So the front and rear window channels are going to be about the same. There's different ways to do this. Right now I'm using the air chisel. As you can see, if you get into it right and you get under it and kind of work around the pinch welds, you're not actually just hitting the pinch welds, you work around them and it weakens them up and you just kind of pry them up. You're good. You do this in many different ways, but this is really strong structure behind here. So if you get stuck, go to another corner and then just kind of work at different things, and you see, once you start messing around this, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's not rocket science to do this, but yeah, wear hearing protection, and that's one way to do it. Once you're done getting that off, you are going to have to go through with a grinding wheel and just clean up the edges. Nothing to this thing, just you gotta make the area clean, rust free, and smooth, so when you go to weld your new roof on, you don't have bows and edges that are gonna, it's gonna lay on there flush. If you saw in the last video, this front channel right here has a lot of rust on it. I think someone tried to repair this roof and obviously didn't do it right. So I cut out some of the old rust. I couldn't find that they make this part, so we'll go ahead and just fix it. This is a little tip on how to do templates. You don't always have to use cardboard, cut off paper. A little tape and a straight edge kind of bent over gives you a really good shape. Like I said, this is just, masking tape is all this is. So maybe if you're making templates and you have to do this, and I like making templates and doing small patch repairs too, but this is a good tip or trick for you to help you out with that process. Again, there's many ways to do this, just another example of something. We also had to use a shrinker stretcher on this one because it was in a channel on a corner, and I'll show you a picture in the future of this patch all done. As I said earlier, as we were kind of getting the roof out of the drip rails, we were replacing the drip rails, so that was just an example. Here we are, the drip rails, we just rip them out, same way as we did the front roof channel and everything else. These aren't really held on very good. Honestly, I recommend replacing these. They're a little bit more money, but really it makes you just knows everything's right. Here was that rust in the front that we cut out. and you see the repair, and on the other side you just see it was also really rusted. Now these e-body cars, I don't think they use factory. You could see there's no factory primer up here. It's bare metal, and I'm assuming that's what's contributing to a lot of rust on these cars. At this point, now that we got all the rust taken care of on the old parts and everything's in weld through primer, I marked old drip rails exactly where they went with a little, I just ran a little cutoff wheel along the line of it because the roof fit really good and I was happy with it. And there's a couple other reference points, holes and stuff that I worked off of. But once I did that, we put the new drip rails in there. You see I clamped them on all corners, and I'm working with my clamp down, making sure they're really tight against the inner structure of the roof. And I'm just working one end to another, tapping down, and it's just the same process. You've seen some of my other videos. The welding part of these panels is very similar. So just use that same techniques. You see I left a corner there and just kind of worked that after that. So just like the front upper roof structure, the rear upper roof structure was all rusted through. The little tabs that the headliner go into, they were all rusted out. So the good thing about this is they do make both of these pieces. So went ahead and ordered them through AMD, and here I am with my Eastwood Perfect Panel Prep tool. We're just using the hole punch version of it, side of it, and just put in holes every inch and a quarter, and where we're gonna weld. The key to this tool, it works great. I recommend it. Keep it oiled if you use it. After just this run, I'll go back through and run oil through it. I'll put it in the head. They need to be oiled. Just a little tip for advice there. Once we got our holes punched out where we're gonna weld, we're gonna go through and prep our area with bare metal. So real simple. Just run a roll lock on here, flap disc. Different ways to do it. This seemed to work good for this thing. You see, it gets it really clean. I can get in all the grooves and everything. And after this, we'll go back through and we'll finish prepping it. I just am doing the areas I'm welding. I'll usually leave the E-coat on a lot of these panels on parts that aren't exterior body. I don't trust the E-coat on exterior body parts, but stuff like this, you're never gonna see. It'll be fine. Once everything's prepped out, we use our wax and grease remover. You probably should be wearing gloves using this. Usually I do, but this is the process I do on all my panels, just to get the dirt, grease, and grime out of them. And then I put my weld through primer on it, and you know you got a good coat adhered to the bare metal, especially since you know you're putting heat while welding. This is the weld through primer I've been using. I use a couple different brands. This is my favorite, so I figured I'd share it. Real simple. I usually put like 2 light coats like that on everything. Don't have to go crazy with this stuff anywhere you're welding. This stuff is key. It's going to prevent the rust, and everything we saw under those drip rails, it shouldn't happen. So now that these all are dry, the good thing is this weld through primer, it dries in 10 minutes. It's real fast drying. We'll go ahead and clamp our new parts back onto our roof rails. We're doing the lower section first, and we'll go get those corners welded up, and then we'll put the outer top piece on top of it. Just there you go, exactly like you pulled it off in reverse order. I mean, nothing really to this. Pretty straightforward. The welding, either work one way, one side to another, or from the inside out. I clamped it so much I could do either or, and being that this is an external body part, I'm not as worried about it kicking up as long as I get a good weld on it. You see, like I said, I started on one corner and worked my way out on this one, using clamps every 4 inches or so, and then I moved the clamps around. I've been going back through on the couple spots that the clamps were covering when it's all said and done. You also want to tap it down. The main thing is just get these 2 parts together. You want good solid welds, and the best way to get those is when metal is adhered to each other, you know, with no tolerance and no gaps. Once I got that structure done, we got everything down to bare metal again because we went ahead and epoxy primered it. Here was those patches that I did a little bit ago. This is the car in epoxy primer, and this is really going to stop the car from rusting in the future. This epoxy is great stuff. And now that the whole structure on the car is done, we're going to turn our attention to the roof skin itself, the new AMD roof skin. I did test fit this on the car first. You don't want to spend all this time prepping this panel and go crazy with it and then come to find out it doesn't fit on the car. We actually did the quarter panels and everything else in the last video, so before we welded on the quarter panels, the roof was actually test fitted on the car in place. If you're not doing quarter panels, you're kind of limited on how much room you can do. It should fit. Most of the roof parts I've ever used, I haven't had any crazy things not fitting, or they're usually, the tolerances have been pretty good on them. But still, test fit it first, and then go ahead and you can prep it. As you saw, we used the perfect panel prep tool, the Eastwood one, on the front and rear window channels. And then what I'm doing, the roof drip rail edges that weld into the drip rails, the Eastwood punch tool was trying to put the holes too far out with the gaps on it, so we'll just go through with a 3/8 drill bit and we'll drill them right in the center, which will make our welds come out that much better. So obviously I had to go back through now and clean up the epoxy off the areas I was going to weld, and then I'm adding weld through primer on the seams that are going to be welded. So that's what that lighter white is, that weld through primer on top of the epoxy. That's going to be the best way to get a good weld and stop rust at the same time. Putting the roof on, pretty straightforward, no secrets to that. Come from the back, come from the front, just lay it on there. And I do like to push that corner right there, that edge behind the rear window and the door window. I think that's the #1 area you got to line up. And then what I did, like I said, this roof was already on the car. Everything was pre-drilled with Coleco clamps, 1/8" holes. So you see I'm going back through and I'm just putting all those clamps back in. And everything's already test fit. I knew now it's gonna fit and the whole roof's gonna hold down straight. So like I said, we'll just reclamp it before we go back through and weld it again. I do not want to weld anything until I know the roof is 100% in the spot that it's gonna go. And you see the rest of the body panels already on the car too, so I'm not really worried about anything else. The roof is the last part to go on. Even with all those Coleco clamps in, I go through, I love these type of vice grip clamps. So we go through and I just pinch them down. You see, I put them right next to each other, and I know when I go to weld that everything is tight. I'm not going to have any, gaps between the panels or anything else. And that makes me feel better if we go put the window on or put, seals in, trim in. It just, you feel better about it when you know everything was clamped tight and it's smooth. And then when you go to clean up the welds, you can really tell the difference on just a perfectly straight piece. I start in the center and I'm working my way out on both sides, and I like to start in the back on, I think, about every roof I've ever done. And I work in the back and I kind of take a process and I work the sides and I work forward, and then I work, you'll see in the last step where I'm working from the center and the front back out. I'm kind of pushing that towards the A-pillars, and if something does go wrong, I can kind of work the A-pillars a little bit easier. That's the idea behind it. You kind of hide more there, but I haven't really run into any issues. The roof installs have been pretty straightforward when you do the proper prep stuff to them. So you see I'm still using clamps. I'm pulling that B pillar in really tight where my lead is going to be laid in a future video. And you see I'm not really skipping around. I'm kind of just welding one area straight down. You do not want a high spot in the B pillar. That's really going to hurt you in the bodywork stage later. And then we're going to run right up the roof rails right now, the drip rails, where we're going to weld. Again, working from the back forward, using the clamps, moving the clamps, and I'm just doing each weld one at a time, knowing I don't have any issues. Now that the driver's side's all done, I'll show you a different angle on the passenger side and welding. I have these clamps all pre-staged, and I've been moving them forward, kind of adjusting them so I can weld in between them. For me, I personally like this way the best. Again, that's not the only way to do it. Just this seems to work good for me, and these clamps are perfect for just gripping down and not bending that drip rail edge. So if you are doing roofs, I recommend go ahead and buying some of these clamps, these vice grips. You can see I'll also use a body hammer just to get in there and just make sure and just fine tune it and tweak it a little bit better. And I was saying earlier, the last step, we're going to work from the front window channel from the inside out, and it's the same exact process as the rear, just kind of working my way in between the clamps, making sure everything's tight. And after I did this, no problems at all with this whole roof install. All right, we're wrapping up the roof install on the 71 Barracuda. You can see I cleaned up all the channels and everything else. We are going to add lead to this area. You can add body filler, all metal, or lead it. The drip rails are done minus your right before paint. After your body work, you're going to add either self-leveling seam sealer or just regular seam sealer. But you can see all that's cleaned up. You can see down here, we're also going to add lead here and finish that off, but it's been welded on both sides, on the inside and the outside, and cleaned up. The rear window is complete. We are going to test fit the rear window in the car when we do our final metal work and everything else just before we hit the bodywork stage. So we're going to do that, and then the same thing will come around on this side, and we'll just go over the rest of it. Same thing, just cleaned up in metal work. Everything's smooth here. The transitions really well. Like I said, this will probably be lead about right in that section, or all metal if you choose. Drip rails done on this side, and same thing on here. Everything fits nice. It's real smooth. We're still gonna body work it. This car is getting a vinyl top, so we don't have to go crazy with it. So that's how you install the metal work and do most of the install on a roof on a e-body car. The Challenger is gonna be similar. Obviously, the roof's gonna be a little different, but the process is the same. And really, most cars are gonna be similar to this. Just you know, a couple here or there small differences. Thank you for sticking along, watching the video. Hope you learned something. Like, subscribe, comment on our channel. Tell us what you like, don't like, and we appreciate it. Thanks again.